Yuki Tsunoda has been linked to a promotion in Red Bull after the latest blunder from Liam Lawson, and it seems like there will be more competition for the Racing Bull seat than the Kiwi driver could have anticipated. After what is likely going to be a swap between Yuki and Liam, Colapinto has joined the chat because Helmut Marko was seen leaving the Alpine hospitality in China. But with this in mind, can Tsunoda be the right choice for the Red Bull seat? And more importantly, who is going to be Hadjar's teammate for the remainder of 2025? There is no doubt that Red Bull is headed for a huge shake-up in the upcoming period, primarily because of the poor performance of Lawson in the first two races. After having two consecutive P20 qualifying results and not scoring a point even with 3 disqualifications ahead of him, Red Bull are now seriously considering a move in which Lawson will be replaced by Tsunoda. But what this suggested is that Liam will be part of Racing Bulls, the team that originally enabled him to show his talent to the Formula One world, and now that scenario has shaken up with the latest development of events. Yuki Tsunoda has spoken about the opportunity of replacing Liam Lawson and said that he is 100% ready to do it, primarily because the car is much faster and he wouldn't have an issue in the adaptation process. Furthermore, he was pulled back by a PR person because it was obvious that this is now a very sensitive matter and it shouldn't be talked about publicly. But Tsunoda did nothing wrong. He went on to showcase his interest in Red Bull and proved that he wants and needs that seat to prove his worth. But the seriousness of the situation goes far beyond the promotion. Yuki would have to perform in an extremely solid manner if he wants to remain a Red Bull driver. There have been doubts whether or not Tsunoda can become the next competitive number 2 driver in the team because the car behaves in a very strict way that only Verstappen seems to be able to handle right now. Elaborating further on this, Horner went on to say, Max is quite specific in what he wants from a car to make it fast, and that is generally a very positive front end on the car, a very sharp turn-in. Of course, the consequence of that is it will unsettle the rear of the car, and that for a driver is tremendously sapping if you've got a loose rear end on these cars on entry into corners. So that is where he excels, that's where he's able to live on a knife's edge of adhesion. But if you are to ask Lawson, the Kiwi driver doesn't think that the time of Tsunoda has arrived yet. Quite the contrary. Liam said that the time of his former teammate is over, and even though many would fail to agree with him and his arrogant statement, it does have a bit of a solid argument behind it. When talking about the pressure he feels from Tsunoda and whether it would be the right decision to swap the seats from Japan onwards, Lawson went on to say, "You can't feel sympathy in this sport, and anyway, if I look back over our career, I was teammates with him in F3 and I beat him. In Euro Formula, I was teammates with him in New Zealand and I beat him there. And then in F1 last season, I think honestly, if I look at all the times he got promoted instead of me in those early years, then no, he's had his time. Now it's my time." And here is why Lawson is being scrutinised for his driving, but the same can happen to Tsunoda quite quickly as well, the behaviour of the car. Yuki has been quite decent with Racing Bulls, but if we're to look at Lawson's performance there, he was also decent in the Italian-based squad. He did score his first points in 2023 in Singapore after replacing Ricciardo in a 5-race stint, and was a solid driver throughout the 6 races in 2024 as well. This goes to show that the car might be easier to drive, and just because Lawson is struggling to deliver top-notch performance in Red Bull, it doesn't automatically mean that any other driver out there could do the same. If we are to look at Tsunoda's past, we can't help but note how many blunders he's had. Even in 2024, he was prone to mistakes and he wasn't really cooperative on the radio. Marko, on the other hand, had a lot of positive feelings about Tsunoda, and when talking about the improvement that Yuki made over the past couple of years, he went on to say, "Yuki changed his management and has been performing absolutely top-notch so far. He is in the form of his life and has made another quantum leap this year. Yuki is a different Yuki from the years before. He is more mature. It took a while, but now it looks like it's working." But the situation in Racing Bulls might be a bit different compared to what we expected, because apart from the rumours that Colapinto was going to join the Italian team in this shake-up, Marko was also seen in the Alpine hospitality during the Chinese GP. There is no doubt that there's been a lot of interest interest from the Austrian team in the services of Colapinto, but if we are to look at this situation a bit deeper, it's not really an upgrade if you compare it to Lawson. After scoring points in his second race in Baku, the Argentinian driver has done nothing more but create chaos for the Grove-based squad, ramping up the bills and preventing the team from building upgrade parts. On the other hand, Lawson is a far more secured option because we do know that he's been extremely solid in the short-lived period with Racing Bulls. Nevertheless, this is a situation that would have to be discussed sooner rather than later because Red Bull has a lot to lose in the foreseeable future. A fight in the Constructors' Championship and a place that could cost the team tens of millions of dollars. Even Horner himself admitted that they need Lawson to score points and time is not his closest ally right now. So with this in mind, a change is on the horizon. The only question is who is going where. There has been a report from F1 Insider that says Verstappen won't be happy with Lawson being swapped by Tsunoda because the four-time world champion doesn't think the driver is the problem. Also, he said this before when Perez was struggling with the car, the team needs to focus on fixing the problems of the RB21 rather than finding a driver who would be suited for the strong and biting front end of it. It's far less likely that Verstappen fears a competitive teammate because the car is in a condition where he is the only one that could tame it, but nevertheless we shouldn't be jumping to conclusions because we do know for a fact that he won't remain in Red Bull for too long if they do continue with these struggles. Therefore, if Tsunoda manages to find his groove in Red Bull and be extremely close to Verstappen, but the team isn't fighting for a championship in both categories, then we are going to see a new potential shake-up that would define the future of the Austrian team for the greater good. Judging by Verstappen's comments, it seems like he would love to see Lawson performing in Racing Bulls because he understands that the car is easier to drive, and this is something Liam admitted to as well. When talking about the behaviour of the RB21 and how it affects Lawson's confidence, Max has gone on to say, if you look at the difference between the two drivers and the other teams, they are all closer together. It also shows that our car is extremely tough. I think if you put Liam in the Racing Bulls car, he will go faster. I really think so. That car is easier to drive than ours. I also noticed that when I talked to Liam. Last year, I didn't think the difference between him and Yuki Tsunoda was that big. Otherwise, the team wouldn't have made the choice to put him in at Red Bull either. Lawson didn't agree too much with this statement from Max, as he said that the RB21 is not that difficult to drive, it's just that he needs time to get adapted to it and his goal is to be fighting at the front. But that is something that he doesn't have at all, because with the latest meeting of Red Bull being scheduled for this week, we could see Lawson being sacked by the team very soon. It's up to us to wait and see whether Red Bull would commit to Colapinto or they would do the old school swap that they've done so many times in their existence. But one thing is for sure, there is definitely going to be a shake-up in the team, and it depends highly on how the team feels for the rest of the drivers in question, Tsunoda and Colapinto. With all this in mind, do you think that Tsunoda will be the next Red Bull driver as early as Japan? And more importantly, who do you think will be seated in the Racing Bull seat? Let us know in the comments below, and if you want to know more about the FIA's latest controversy against Ferrari, make sure to check out the video that appears on your screen right now.